Thank you. And I see people I know and people I don't know. That's good. Uh, Welcome. And I hope some of you have had an opportunity to see the second company performance this afternoon. If you haven't, I hope you'll have an opportunity to see it at 7:30. And I want to welcome my guests, Ruthlyn Salomons and Ephraim Sykes. Now, even though the information is accessible to you digitally, I want them to talk to you about themselves. Let's start with Ruthlyn, ladies first.
Okay, hello everybody. Nice to see you all. I am thrilled to be here. I think this is an amazing opportunity to have an interesting conversation about a part of my life that was incredibly enriching for me. I didn't know it at the time, I was quite young, but I was a member of the company many, many years ago, and so I get to talk about that.
84, 85.
Many, many years ago. So I am currently, so I left the company and I moved on to the performing with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. So that's the main company. Got to travel a whole lot and had amazing experiences in my life and grew so much as an artist. And that propelled me on to other things as a performer and a dancer and an educator. And then eventually I started working for The Lion King on Broadway, and I've been there for 25 years. So I'm still there today, and I basically help to curate and to keep this breathing, living piece of art alive with a team of extraordinary people, and we just keep this amazing production, very successful production going day in and day out. So that's who I am.
I am Ephraim Sykes, and I had the pleasure of joining the Ailey II company back in, I think it was 2006 or so, and traveled with them for almost 3 years, and like you, learned so much as an artist, as a person. I kind of came into my manhood, if you will, even though I was still a very young man at that time, and learned lessons that, of course, I still use to this day. And now I, like Ruthlyn, have made it to the Broadway side of things. After Ailey II, I stepped into The Little Mermaid on Broadway, and then to, I don't know, Memphis and Hamilton and Motown and all kind of things. So I'm currently doing a show called Our Town. It's a play on Broadway right now. It's my first time doing a straight play, which is so funny enough that I'm still using, again, a lot of the lessons that I've learned here with what I'm doing now in a completely different setting. So, yeah, that's kind of the very short of the long about who I am and what I do now.
I'm going to take this moment to, I want to take this moment to tell you about Ailey II, why, how it started, what Mr. Ailey had in mind when he asked me to do this. First of all, he wanted to give the most gifted and talented dancers in the school an opportunity to know what it was to work in a professional situation. He wanted to prepare them. And he wanted dancers, really, who could do just about everything, every technique. In the school, there was modern techniques and, of course, classical ballet. There was African dance. There a number of disciplines, all in one body. He wanted all of that in one body because he was a very hybrid choreographer. I mean, he loved Martha Graham. He loved all of the moderns. He loved the discipline of the classical ballet. He talked about the fact that he wanted, what did he say, a ballet bottom and a modern top. He wanted that articulation in the feet and legs and the suppleness in the upper body. So he thought, why not train them here at my school and prepare them for professional careers beyond being a student? That is, working with choreographers emerging choreographers as well as those seasoned choreographers. And many of those emerging choreographers did have works that made it to the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. When we started, originally, we were really working for audiences that could not come to performances. We took performances to them. That is in homes for senior citizens and those people who were incarcerated, as well as young, very young people who were virtually homeless. So, in fact, our first performance was in a prison, Leesburg State Prison. We did, I say, a matinee and an evening to a captive audience. But it was an audience that was like, their response was like any other audience. I was looking at a picture of those 12 dancers that day in black dance skirts, black tights, and black tank tops for the men. No costumes, just them and the movement. And these audiences went wild. And it made, I think, the dancers realize what dance could do, what this language could do, what this language was saying to these men. And we did many of those performances throughout the New York State, New Jersey, Connecticut, as well as we began to do performances for what we call our normal audiences. And then we began to tour on the bus, many long hours on the bus. We had one-nighters going from one destination to another, one venue to another. It could have been a gym. It could have been a small opera house. It could have been a community concert house, any number of things. But it was a range of experiences for these young dancers that helped prepare them for what I call the real world. And Alvin used to call it a kind of a finishing school for dancers. But I tried to give them works, acquire works that would challenge their abilities and all that would help nurture them, help them grow and develop into the artists they wanted to be. And I have to say the track record is amazing. Those audiences that go, those dancers that go on to professional careers in the performing arts, as well as teachers. Some have become doctors. I'm proud of that too. So, well, I want to know, do you remember what your first performance was? Ruthlyn.
First performance, I think the first dance I learned was, of course, Blue Suite and Revelations. That was part of the regular curriculum. And I think that we were also we were doing Ice Fire when I joined. So I was also doing Ice Fire. It was a Fred Benjamin piece, a lot of fun. Oh my gosh, so much fun. And that was also my first time having a body of work to focus on. Before it was class and workshops, and gosh, I hope I get to do this workshop so I can work with this choreographer, and maybe they can see that I have something to say or special. You know, I'd gotten to this point where you get to a point in the school and you're like, well, I don't know if there's anywhere else I could go. I gotta get a job, right? They're gonna kick me out otherwise. So it was really wonderful to finally get into Second Company. Thank you for that. And be able to work and play and to find myself, really.
What about you?
I think, and I could be telling a lie, I think one of my fellow company members, Megan, is out there in the house. If I'm lying, tell me. She might remember more than I do. But I think my first performance was actually the year before I joined. I apprenticed for a year, and then you guys went to Lake Placid, and it was my first time going to Lake Placid, and I believe I got to do Rev for the first time and be Twiggy, and I got to do Yellow, I believe. I think those were my two little parts. That was my like dipping my toe in before getting fully submerged, which I actually did. Then, what, 2 years later, remember we fell off that boat?
Oh, yes.
That's the other story.
Okay. Moving on.
We'll get to that story. It just ended with Judith Jamison coming up to me before the performance the next day and talking about, oh, I heard you were wading in the water for real.
You know, I want to point out, you see some photos on the monitor, and during the time Ruthlyn was there, I know we didn't have a formal photo call. And that's why I couldn't find any pictures except one of Ruthlyn. And that was a picture from a performance in Toronto, Canada at the Wharf Theatre, the Harbor Theatre. And it was exciting to have that in action. I mean, that's an actual picture from the performance. Now you see many more of Ephraim, because by that time we were beginning to have formal photo calls where the dancers, not only would they have pictures of them dancing, but they would have their headshots and, you know, all kinds of things they needed to be able to apply for jobs, and also for our archives and also for our programming. So we were evolving year by year. I was pushing, and I have to say Alvin and Judith were extraordinarily supportive of the work we were doing and what I was trying to do, and to bring these dancers full circle so that they would be able to compete once they got out there into the real world. I'd like to know, well, you've talked a little bit about it, but how the Ailey Repertory has influenced you as an artist.
Wow. I got being able to dip my toe, as you said, into, first of all, the classics for us is Revelations and Blue Suite, and Games, Congo Tango Palace, Tally Beatty. These pieces have such strong characters in them, and the choreography is incredibly challenging. They're all very different. What's so wonderful about a young performer coming into these worlds, let's say, of each of these pieces, is that you discover what you have and where you need to go and where you can go. A lot of it is playing. Knowing how to play is a big deal in a human being's life. We tend to forget. But what we do with this art form is we reach into ourselves and we feel for what we can bring out into a movement or a sequence or a sentence. We're communicating with all of you. So I was basically just enthralled with having all this opportunity to do this because that's all I ever wanted to do. So here I was in this place that was allowing me the good grace of being able to put on this hat and try on this story. Each story was just heart-rendingly beautiful. Revelations is, as you know, a classical, beautiful piece that really tells a whole spectrum of humanity. Congo Tango Palace had this grit in it that literally frightened me, but then when you learn to really challenge yourself and sort of bring your back up against it, you discover something so deep in yourself you had no idea that was there. Who doesn't need that in life? Because life will do you if you don't learn how to live, right? So for me, it gave me tools that I use to this day, and it's helped me to pivot so many different times to deal with challenges and adversities. And I think that's how I'm able to do what I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, when you danced with Ailey II, why do you think I selected you?
I saw that question on the list. I was like, I don't know. I choose to believe that I was seen for being a very hard worker. I wasn't always the most flexible. I didn't have the greatest facility of all, but I had a heart that was as big as this room. And I would, if a choreographer said jump, I say how high, and off what foot, and you know what I mean. I've always kind of had that, I think, bravery and openness, and I think I had a love for quality of movement versus maybe flash and things that like sometimes wow people. There's other things wowed me, how simple and how subtle and how deeply somebody could move. I hope that was it, but I'm not exactly sure.
Well, no, I mean, one senses that very profound commitment when you watch someone and how they work and what they bring to what they're doing, to the movement, what of themselves that they're bringing to the movement. And yes, hard work. And that's why choreographers loved working with you. I mean, you were lifting everybody all over the place.
I also did love partnering.
So yes, and for Ruthlyn, the same thing. I mean, one night she had to be thrown into a piece. We were rehearsing during the intermission, and it was the section in Blue Suite that Judith Jamison did in the red section. So I'd always cast it with the very tall girl, but that night Ruthlyn was the only one available to do it. And she did it, and she made it her role. I said, my gosh, look at that. And I began to see the just the magnitude of what was going to happen next. So I was always in wait from these dancers, what they were going to reveal from performance to performance, from choreographer to choreographer, yes, and what they have done above and beyond, Ailey II, and even the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. I mean, you had the good fortune to know Mr. Ailey. You knew Mr. Ailey through me and through your teachers and through the works. But somehow it has engaged you and your lives to the point where you've been able to use that material. And I see it all the time when I'm working with you, when I'm not working with you, but when I'm watching you on stage. And I have to admit, I don't take responsibility for it. I feel, a little prideful. I will admit that. But I don't take full responsibility for it because they made the commitment. The opportunity was there. They understood what the opportunity was, and they used it. And that's all I've asked any dancer to do. If you're here, you have a responsibility to yourself. And if you abuse that, well, that's a shame. That's really a shame. And I've seen a lot of talented dancers abuse it. But maybe it means it's not for them. We have to be faced with that too. Let's see. I don't know. What is the question? I'm asking both of you. You wish you had asked me when I was artistic director, when you were in the company. I don't know if I'm opening a can of worms but I'll take my chances.
Should I take a crack at that? Okay. Interesting question. I think I wish I'd asked you if it was always going to be this hard.
And my answer would have been, it never gets easier.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, I've learned that.
I'm kind of fascinated by the question you actually just asked me, which I wish I would have asked and then being able to know then what you really saw. in me, and not that I didn't believe that you know saw something, but being able to be as specific and know what that is, to be able to, oh, I have, this is my gift. Okay, I can to continue to cultivate it. Like I'm gonna take those words with me now, you know, going forward. Like, oh, this is what somebody that I truly learned a lot and depended on and looked up to, a legend in our midst right now, saw in me physically and spiritually and mentally, that I now know is a superpower. It's like somebody with a superpower that didn't know they had one. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I can put my cape on now, you know, and I save the day. But yeah, knowing that, if I didn't know that back then, I'd have maybe been even further along now.
Well, I always felt that you were, first of all, open and approachable, and that's so important. Yes, that you allow yourself to be vulnerable and always engaged. And that doesn't go away, you know? One sees it in your eyes, but one also sees it in your body, and why choreographers are attracted to you and using you. And you were handsome too, you know. But no, no, but I think that openness and being able to be approached. And the absolute sense of being present. Yes, whether the choreographer is working with you or working with the group or working with someone, you have to always be present. I learned that from when I started doing the position of artistic director, how very different things looked from the front of the room than when you're a dancer. And it was scary. I said, oh my gosh, what did Alvin see me doing, you know? But it's what a director, it's what a choreographer looks for. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely 100%. Thank you.
And I wonder, what advice would you give to that young dancer in Ailey II today in order to nurture them from aspirant to professional?
One of the things that was a really clear lesson for me is realizing that the people that I was coming up with were and people that I was going into new adventures with, was really important to understand that you don't know what this person or this person, how they're going to affect your life in the future. So your ethics is kind of important. Be kind, be respectful, respect the work, respect. One of the things that I learned for the first time in Ailey II was the fact there's an artist who made the costume, an artist who designed the lights, an artist who designed the set, an artist who designed the choreography, an artist, you see it goes on and on and on. This is all people who've done work that you are fortunate enough to now lend your talents to. So respecting the process and the work. It doesn't just happen like that. It is a journey for everyone involved. So in the work that I do now, I see this constantly. It's really good to remind yourself that your ethics follows you. You know, you can't think that it doesn't. People remember, and how you treat the people around you is everything. So that's my advice.
I'm stealing her answer. No, piggybacking off of that, definitely how you treat people and everybody, not just the people that you think can do something for you.
Crew.
Everybody will open up just as many doors as how beautiful your gift is. And on top of that, I think what I also am so grateful for, specifically you and Ailey II for, is it truly teaches you to stay a student. Always be a student. Like, don't think, oh, you're in Ailey II now, you're performing in front of audiences now all over the world, so now I'm a performer, you know what I mean? Now it's like, no, you are still a student, all the while being in these places. And it's something that I've been able to carry with me from every stage, literal stage that I've been on, and these rehearsal rooms that when I walk in, yes, I'm gonna perform this, but I'm here to learn first from the choreographer, from the director now, from the writers of these pieces, from the lighting and stuff. Like literally, what can you teach me so I can continue to grow? If you keep that, I think the humble spirit of no matter what or how big you are, whatever it is, or what stage you're performing on, I'm still being a student. I'm still choosing to learn, even on stage at this moment, and pull from my fellow actors and pull from whoever. Your growth will surprise you. And you'll also, I think, be able to learn to, I think another thing that the legacy of Ailey and Ailey II is we're performing for selfless reasons. We want to give, we want to affect people. It's not about look at me. It's not about, how much applause I can conjure. You know what I mean? We do something for, I think, a higher calling. And I think being able to stay open and stay being a student has really benefited me greatly.
I think both of you are talking about a very profound discipline and dedication to the field and respect. And that has to be there up front and center. That has to be. I wonder if you have any questions for us, the audience. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, you refer to artists abusing the space, the opportunity. I'm curious what that means. In what way would that manifest, or does that manifest?
Well, when I said being in a rehearsal situation, for instance, and being present, choreographers especially are extremely sensitive, very sensitive. They have eyes in the back of their head. And if you are not present, whether they're talking to you or the next person, they can tell. And that's what I call an abuse of the situation, not being present. That's one of those things. Yeah.
I'll say too, with that, and especially nowadays, just because we have so much distraction in our hands often, and you'd be surprised how many spaces, rehearsal spaces or whatever, that you can walk into, and like she said, if you're not being used, and I'm over here on my phone or something like that, or I'm not really giving the time and attention to what's happening in this space and being respectful again to what is happening in this space. So you're disrespecting yourself because you're not going to grow. You don't care. You think you've, I guess, gotten enough, you know what I mean? Or you don't need to know what's being offered at the moment. And like you said, a lot of choreographers can be very disrespected by that, because why don't you think that me saying something to somebody else could apply to you? Or, just we all need to be in the thing together. There's something very magical and spiritual that happens in a rehearsal room that if you check out of it or you think you're too good to know what's happening, it feels disrespectful to the space.
Yeah, I mean, you're really squandering an opportunity. And there's homework to be done. When you leave the studio, you don't turn into another person. You take it with you. You think about it. You don't just leave it behind. But you leave your baggage outside when you go into a rehearsal. Yeah.
Okay. Good evening. I have really enjoyed this panel discussion, and my question is, Ms. Waters, you've had such an influence on so many dancers' lives and careers, and I hear about you all the time, and I just wanted to ask you, kind of bring it to you and wonder, what do you think Mr. Ailey, of all the dancers he worked with, what do you think he saw in you?
Do you have time? He trusted me. I learned that. He trusted me. I had to learn to trust him. I had to learn to trust the director. I'd never worked with anyone like him who gave me so much responsibility as a dancer, long before I became an artistic director. And he was extraordinarily generous in that way. He gave you every opportunity, like he would say, you know, use my steps, but be yourself. He wanted that unique individual in you to come out. And there were maybe 2 or 3 times I was supposed to or have perhaps would have had the opportunity to work with him, but I believe things happen when the time is right. And when I finally did work with the company, because I'd known him for some time. But basically, I felt he trusted me, and he encouraged me. He made me see things in myself that I didn't see, and I could only see that by trusting him. You know, he gave me roles to do I didn't think I could do. And when I finally took up the challenge and did it, well, yeah, I did it. Yeah.
Good evening. I've enjoyed the conversation tonight as well, and I'd like to know from the dancers, how young were you when you started, and what was the journey like in building support from your families for you to choose dance?
Okay, so I laughed because there was no support. There wasn't. I'm a latchkey kid, getting myself to our apartment in the South Bronx back in the late 70s. My mother is a single parent from the Caribbean, working long hours in the hospital. When she finally saw that she needed to do something to keep me off the street, she thought it was a good idea to get me into dance classes. Now, I really wanted to do karate because Bruce Lee was a big thing back then. But yeah, that's when I started in what we call the Dolly Dinkle Ballet School. And lo and behold, I had this journey. But once that period was over, it wasn't something my mother thought that I should consider paying too much attention to. And that is merely because even though at that performance that we did at the end of that year of dance, my first year of dance, I got the solo in this like crazy fancy tutu outfit and rubies all over me, and she was sitting in the back saying, "Don't you embarrass me," and because it just was not something that anyone in our family, in our culture, as we know it, so it was so different. But then many years later, when I was supporting myself, even more years after that, when I bought her a condominium, even more years than that, when I bought myself an apartment, she said, this dancing thing has really been good to you. Everyone has a different story, but that's kind of how that mine went.
Yeah, mine is the opposite, actually. And P.S., I'm in the South Bronx right now, so that's cool to hear. Yeah, my parents, I grew up in the church, ultimately. And my father being a pastor and my mother being a gospel singer and a drummer, they're both musicians. Our house was filled with music and art at all times. So once they found out I had any interest at all, they're like, go, get out and do all of it. Do it all. Any kind of class I could get in, any kind of performance or something, they were there. They were pushing for me. They've always been 100% like, if you got a gift, use it no matter what it is. So I was very fortunate to come from a family out. And he's even saying that, she works for the Lion King. My little sister is on tour with the Lion King as we speak. Like, they really push both of us full steam ahead because they also were artistic people themselves, I'd say. Where are you from? Where am I from? I'm sorry, I couldn't see it. Oh, you. I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Florida. Oh, you too? Florida. Okay, let's go. Where about? West Palm. That's where I was born. All right. Dreyfus? Yes. All right, bet. Yeah, my mom used to teach there. Belinda Sykes. It was probably before your time. Oh. Yeah, that's crazy.
Hi, Miss Waters. I had a question about how you met Mr. Ailey and the day that he asked you to start Ailey II, how that conversation started.
You never heard that story? I tell it all the time. Well, I first met Alvin Ailey. Didn't actually meet him. There was a sighting on 57th Street between Park and Lexington. My girlfriend and I were trolling around New York, exploring. And this very, very handsome man was coming toward us with a pea coat and a watch cap. And he was a vision, really. Very handsome. And he smiled and said hello, and we said hello back. As we passed him, we giggled, we turned around, and he turned around. Oh, my goodness. And I had started taking dance classes at that point at the New Dance Group. So a couple of weeks after that, I was sitting there after school waiting for my class to start, and in he walked. And he said, hello. And like he knew me. And I said, hi. And it turned out he was substitute teaching for Charles Blackwell, whose class I was supposed to take. And that was my first exposure to, I realized years later, Horton technique. I knew it was something similar, but what was this? And I remember him giving the hip figure eights, and I was very, very skinny. And so it was so embarrassing when he grabbed my little hips and tried to get them to do this figure eight. But that was my first meeting. And after that, I went to, when I finally graduated high school, I was still dancing, and I discovered Juilliard. So I auditioned for that, and I went to Juilliard. And while I was there, Juilliard was a 5-year, and I wanted to do it in 4. So I was going to summer school every summer. And one time Alvin said to me, what are you doing this summer? I said, oh, I'm going to summer school. I'm trying to finish Juilliard. He said, excellent, excellent, very good. And then I heard he was doing a show out in New Jersey. I said, oh, Sylvia, why didn't you keep your mouth shut, you know? And there were 2 other instances kind of like that. And then finally, in 1968, in that time I'd seen a lot of dance. I'd seen the premieres of his works. I'd seen all of these amazing choreographers at the YMHA, 92nd Street Y. And dance was what I was going to do. That's what I told my father. I'm making my living doing this. He said, I think you should take that civil service exam just in case. I said, no, this is it. And so 1968, at Ruthlyn Academy, I went to a performance. I think it was a Martha Graham performance. And I ran into Alvin, and I ran into Nick Chernovich, his lighting designer. And he said, Sylvia, what are you doing? And I said, nothing. And that's when I joined the company. Yeah. So.
I had to step out for a minute, so let me know if this question has been asked already. For the 2 of you that are no longer dancing full-time and you're working in another cultural arena, what was that like, and why did you make that decision? Or was that asked already? Okay.
What was it like to work in a different cultural arena, you said?
Like a cultural arts arena.
Ah.
So leaving dance and then working with Lion King, or now you're acting with Our Town and some others, but I don't perceive those as full-time dance-related
Well, no,
productions.
full-time jobs for sure, but definitely not. I'm not dancing. No, you're absolutely right about that. This is how I describe this. I had this experience when I got the contract for Lion King. First of all, I got a phone call. It was Garth. Thank you, Garth. Garth Fagan, the one and only. And when I was invited to see the show, I had this feeling like I had a vision of what the show was lacking. So I kind of shared that with them, and they're like, so when are you ready? It was kind of like that. Now, all of that is to say that, again, all the things that I experienced, starting from the moment I started with Second Company all the way to that moment, is what was fueling that, what gave me the ability to have the vision that I had for the company. And when I started, it was kind of really fast paced, and a lot of things had to happen. Running a department, setting up a department, organizing everything. So I was just in sort of fast mode. And then one day it hit me. I was in the middle of rehearsal. We went on a break. I looked out the window, and there in front of me is 7th Avenue, and all these yellow cabs were stopped in traffic. And the medallions all had them. I mean, there were all of them. There were about 15 cabs, and they had Lion King on them. And I thought, holy shit, what did I get into? It was huge. I didn't realize how huge it was. To me, it was like, oh, this is a good gig, right? I didn't think at the time that I would stay 25 years. No, 5 years. That's usually my length of interest. I usually would move on and do other things. I was very, very agile that way. I knew a lot of people in the industry, and I wanted to keep learning and growing and doing different things. But this position and the demands of it kept me pivoting so much. I kept learning and growing, and before you know it, you look up and it's like, oh, I don't feel like I've been here long enough. There's more that I want to do. So, I felt very fortunate to be in a situation like that. Thank you.
I still dance. I mean, I guess it's the main thing. I've added other tools to the toolbox. I think I also remember growing up, I've always been the kid, like people would ask me what you want to do when you grow up, and I'm like, everything. So it's always been a goal of mine to be able to do everything at the same time. So right now I'm doing a play, thankfully, where I don't have to dance, because I've done that for so many years. I get to walk and talk and be a regular human. But in my off time, I'm doing another workshop. I just finished one last week where I'm doing splits and turns and all kind of other stuff. So it's ceaseless and not in a monotonous way. It's just everything is dance for me in that way. Even the acting that I'm doing is dance. It's what I'm learning. Because I didn't go to acting school, so I had to learn how to act with my body. That's what Sylvia taught me. I had to learn intentionality through movement. And now, how do I use my mouth with the same intentionality? So it's all dance, it's all movement, it's all, how can I even, if there's a deaf person on stage with me, my cast, how can I communicate with him in my body to tell him what part of the story we're in? You know what I mean? So it's all just interconnected for me, and I don't think it's ever gonna stop.
I love that answer, because you're reminding me that I actually haven't stopped dancing. I may not be practicing every day, but I work with dancers, I work with actors, I work with singers, and we all move. Yeah. We all do. And intentionality, absolutely. What are you saying? What is it about? What are you trying to communicate? What is that person saying to you? What are you going to respond with? Right? So all of those things are so, so important. And all those dancers are doing it. All the singers are doing it, all the actors are doing it, and we are right there with them. So my job is to get them to be as honest and genuine as they can be. Right?
Hi, I'm Shara. I started dance at 3, stopped at 26. Ailey's was a big chunk of it. I got to dance with Judith. It was amazing. But like 20 years later, I was 5. 20 years later, I was missing something in my heart and my soul. And I went back to dance, and I came back to Ailey's. I was like, this is my home. And there was a mantra that started to hit me, right? I was like, yeah, dance is my truth. It really, really is. And I wrote this, and I said, clarity is that place where the spirit dancing is in complete sync with the soul that plays the music. And I'm wondering, as you guys have journeyed through your lives, and this is for everyone, including you, Sylvia, as you've journeyed through your life, what is the mantra that dance has brought to your soul, to your spirit? Sorry.
Well, basically, for me, I always felt that I needed to do this. I know we hear a lot these days, the dance chose me, but I needed to do this. And as a young teenager, when I was bitten, stricken, whatever you want to call it, I knew it. And I felt so fortunate to know what I was going to do for most of my life. I felt so fortunate. And then transitioning from dancer to director, that's not anything I ever expected to do. It was Alvin that approached me. I didn't say, I want to be a director, no way. The responsibility of that was huge. And to work with 12 gloriously talented young people, adolescents really, who were on the verge of something amazing. It's always been a privilege to me to work that way, to work with these individuals, these great talents. And I mean, I haven't seen every show you've done, but most of them, and I've seen you dance in almost with Baryshnikov and doing Swan Lake, and I go, wow, and I just revel in all of that, and whatever I can do to help any aspiring artists, I'm willing to do it. I love doing it. It's a privilege.
I don't know if I have a specific mantra, but again, dance is kind of like the what you said about Ailey, how he likes his dances. It's business at the bottom. It's a ballet bottom, but it's free at the top. It's this. How do you work as hard as you can and still enjoy and still love and still communicate and still be open and still be free, but still have that fierce fire and grit simultaneously? I think it's a beautiful balance, and that's maybe a mantra I found, and it came through dance of balance, right? And I want to feel balanced. I want to be balanced. To be balanced, I don't think is a thing, because balance is active. You're always balancing. It's always a push and pull. So it helps me deal with life, because it's always a fight somewhere, and it's about finding the balance of where's your freedom, where's your peace, where's your joy, especially nowadays. So how you can exist in both, and I think then everything else comes to you as it should. Your opportunities, your blessings, your resources, your friends, your relationships, all of that, I think, comes through that balance.
That's beautiful. Wow. For me, and we would have these Q&As a lot, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm not awake, but here I am in front of a bunch of people, usually students, talking about what we do. And one of the things that one of the questions is, why dance? And it's not a mantra, really, but what I would say is that dance saved my life. Little kid, no prospects, hanging out in the South Bronx, a lot of violence around me, a lot of blight. Somehow I found dance. Thanks, Mom. Right? It was a reluctant thing that she did, but it really helped. Right? So it saved me. So I understand what you're saying about when you found yourself back to it, something clicked, right? Yeah. We all dance. We forget. We tell ourselves we don't, but we all dance. So just don't do that to yourselves anymore, okay?
Yeah, it's true. Dance is a plan for life. And it's our first language, movement, before there was verbiage.
I was wondering, how was it transitioning from dancer to artistic director, and then later down the line transitioning to watching the legacy live on and still be here to this day?
It was scary. It was scary because prior I had only myself to think of, you know, my feet, my arms, my legs. Although I was always working in concert with many people. But like I said, being at the front of the room, I realized the responsibility, the fragility of these young people, the vulnerability, the talent, getting them to the next step. How do you do that? At that point, I only had one son. Now I had 12 children, you know. But it was a challenge. But it was a challenge that I liked. And Alvin was an amazing mentor. Amazing. And like I said, he trusted me. He listened to me. Probably more than I listened to him, you know. So it was a challenging transition, but one that I welcomed, really. I embraced it. Because being in that groove with so much energy was certainly energizing for me. And I didn't want to let anybody down. When I believed in them, I wanted it to work for them. Now, the moment I don't believe in you, it's usually because you don't believe in yourself. And then you have to make a decision. And if I can help you make that decision, I'll try that. But it was, I guess in some ways, Alvin made it an easy transition for me. I think mainly because of that trust. Yeah. Is that it? One more? Going. Yes.
This has been great, very deep. Ephraim, I want to know how you fell in the water.
Oh man. So we, Ailey II, takes a trip to Lake Placid every other year. And of course, there's the big lake. And we find out that, you know, they're like, oh, let's come out and we'll get you guys on the canoes and, you know, have a great time. But before we got there this day, they told us that, like, hey, it looks like it's going to storm, so the canoes would probably be canceled for this time. So we're like, fine. So we get to the dormitory, wherever we're staying. And they come back, they're like, hey, it looks like the storm is actually holding off. We'll let you guys get on the canoes. Like, this lake is massive, right? You can't hardly see to the other end of it. So me and Josh Johnson, you remember Josh? We're all, Megan, I don't remember who you were with, but we all get in these canoes 2 by 2, and we're like, you know, paddling and having a good old time. And me and Josh are like racing, and we're out to the middle of this huge lake. And we hear some sirens going off, like tornado sounding, like, and some thunder. I was like, what the hell? And I mean, it's literally a black line, like, of clouds and storm that was just like approaching us like this. And we looked back and everybody else had already seen it. It was going back to shore except for me and Josh. And the rain fell so hard. And it's thundering and lightning and the wind is blowing. And we're trying to literally turn around to get back to the shore. And lo and behold, these waves, I looked over and I just see Josh's feet sticking out of the water. It knocked him off. And then next thing you know, the waves knocked me over. So we were literally out there in the middle of Lake Placid, treading water for about 20 minutes. I kid you not. It was just it literally was the scariest day of my life. I remember at one point trying to swim, and Josh came back. He was like holding me for a while and like swimming with me, and he got tired. I told him, just let me go, and I'll come back to you. He's like, float on your back. I was like, okay. And then I floated and got way back out into the middle of the lake. And I was like, all right, so this is my day. God, I'll be up in a minute, Lord. And they couldn't send a boat because the storms were too strong. So we literally had to wait for the storm to pass. And they finally came out there in a boat and rescued us and brought us back to the dorms. And it was my first time being hypothermic. I was just like shaking really hard in my room. And we still had to do Revelations the next day. So in comes Judith Jamison with so I heard you were really wading in the water yesterday. I was like, it's not funny. It's not funny. Too soon. I'm still shaking. So yeah, that's a story I'll keep with me for the rest of my life. Ailey II almost killed me.
I just want to say you've been a fabulous, wonderful audience. You know, we love this kind of communication with you. You can see these are real people doing real things, doing beautiful things, and always bringing beauty to your life. Yes, and that spirituality that is so important to us. So I want to thank you very much. I want to thank the Whitney for making this possible. Thank you. I want to thank Ruthlyn and Ephraim.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you,
everything.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.